Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the final video in the restoration of this Braun TS2. In this video, it's mostly cabinet work and final touch-ups, final details. There are a few interesting quirks here, like the grill cloth. You won't believe how I found that. Sometimes you just get lucky when people overhear your conversations. That's what happened here. You'll find out later why. The other thing was I made a modification to the fine-tuning on shortwave. Following a few of your suggestions, I've made it a bit more sensitive, less range, more selectivity, which is something that makes it a lot more useful. So basically, this is taking it from where we were all the way to the end, including the actual cabinet finish, which was a lot simpler than I thought it would be. If you enjoy this sort of thing, stick around, enjoy the video. First thing you have to do is to remove everything from the cabinet, everything you can. And in this case, there wasn't that much to remove. There's the front panel, the grill cloth, and that lets me take out the speakers. The only element that actually comes off is this bar across the front, and it's held in with two screws from the back. You need to remove that before you can remove the front panel. And then you get to the speakers. This thing's got one big mid-range and two tweeters. And they are not those little crappy electrostatic tweeters either. They are actual tweeters. Really good stuff. I mean, look at this thing. And when I cleaned it up, this is the result. I mean, there was a really ugly layer of tar all over it. So it was all yellow. And I had to use all sorts of products to get that off. Nothing too dramatic. But look at this. It looks absolutely new. I mean, look at that. There's no rust whatsoever. I suppose the tar did a good job of keeping the rust away. At least it was good for something. And when we look at the insides, there's no sign of wear, tear, nothing. It is in perfect condition. That cone is immaculate. And the same applies for those two little guys. And just so you know, those two little guys in the center have got a screw. And it looks like rust from here, but it's not. They used a brass screw. Can you believe it? The screws on this thing are brass, so they just don't rust. I mean, these guys thought of everything. This is really great. Really great set of speakers to work with. And that'll make the sound just all that much better when I have Bluetooth applied to this as well. And then we've got the most serious issue with this radio. The grill cloth is really a mess. This one is not cleanable. It's got a hole there. It's totally faded. And I know this radio has been in a smoker's house, so a lot of this brown or whatever this color is probably tar from tobacco. So I had to look for an alternative, and finding grill cloth that actually matches the original is not easy. But when you've got a mother that listens into your conversations, there's a chance. I was talking about the problem of finding this kind of fabric, and my mom, of all people, said, well, what sort of fabric are you looking for? So I showed her the picture of the radio, and she said, oh, I've seen that before. I said, what do you mean you've seen that before? She said, I've seen fabric exactly like that before. And apparently she had. This is the stuff. She pointed this out as fabric they use for some sort of embroidery in Madeira. I don't know much about that, but apparently this is the stuff they use. And I went to this shop she pointed out, one of those little old stores that still sell needles and thimbles and all sorts of stuff. We don't even know what they are anymore. And they had this fabric. So I bought a couple of meters of it. I think was the minimum I could buy. And it was white. So I had to tone it or change the color of it. And I reverted to my old trick of using tea, black tea. You just put a bag of black tea in a pot of water and you let it seep, and then you put your fabric in there and leave it for different amounts of time. And I timed it. This one was 5 minutes. This one was 10 minutes. This was 15. And this one was, oh hell, I forgot it in the tea. And I realized I'd forgotten it in the tea when I was driving into town. So this one is probably a little bit too dark, because what I'm trying to achieve is not that color. It's actually a completely different color. It's that one over there. And if you start putting this side by side, that is not far off. This one is probably even closer. Now remember, you're seeing this through a camera, which does all sorts of things. And I think this one is perfect. I think this was the color that was there originally. So this is the, what is it, 5, 10, 15 minutes in black tea. Now I'm probably going to have to leave it for longer, because this is going to be a bigger piece of fabric and the same amount of tea, but I'm hopeful that I'm going to get something exactly like this, and I'll be able to just rip this one off and coat it. Let me go and try it out, and then I'll show you the result. So what do you think? This thing suits it very, very well. I think this is probably what the original looked like. I left it a little bit longer in the tea because I wanted a little bit more cream color, and I think the result is fantastic. Well, quite a transformation, right? I decided to go all out and finish it because going through all the details can be quite boring to watch and very difficult to record, actually. I started with the cabinet. This cabinet was very easy to handle. All I needed to do was sand it down. I sanded it down with 220 grit, and then I went up to 330 or 340, whatever it was. It actually was a pretty simple job because there aren't any strange corners or anything like that. So it was fairly simple. And there were a few little patch-ups I needed to do on some of the edges, and those were done. And of course, afterwards, sanded down. And then it was just a matter of applying the stain or the varnish. I used this Bondex wood varnish for light oak. I wanted to retain that yellow color, the light color, which is what the original was supposed to look like. And I think I quite like it. I quite like it. This took about 3 coats. It didn't need much more because this is not a gloss finish. The surface is actually, I wouldn't say rough, but it's pretty natural. There's not a glossy piano finish to this thing. It wasn't meant to be like that. And because this, all the edges are pretty angular, there are no funny corners, no funny edges, no funny round sections. It was fairly straightforward. Even the grills on the side are cutouts. There isn't a plastic insert or anything like that. So again, sticking to the concept they were following in those days, less is more. This thing was very, very simple, but the result is very, very pleasing. And then, of course, it was a matter of assembling everything, starting with the speakers that were soldered in place. The voltage was adjusted, the B+ was adjusted to 270 volts using the MOSFET trimmer, and the Bluetooth was soldered in place as it had been done before, and that's about it. And this is the result of all that. It's done, it's completed, it's ready to be tested, it's sparkling, it's shiny, it's got no ugly stains, it doesn't smell of nicotine or tar. And that grill cloth, wow, it really sticks out. I mean, that grubby one that was there with the tears and stains just, well, made it look sad. Now it's looking happy again, which is great. And of course the dial glass, which is new, the other one was completely messed up. And I really, really am pleased that I've discovered a way to redo this with the UV printing. The biggest task is actually designing it. But after you've done that, it's pretty simple and you can reproduce it as much as you like. Let's start with shortwave because I want to show you the result of a slight modification that I made on the fine tuning.
Right now it's time for music.
Remember, we had very little flexibility at the high end because this capacitance was very high compared to what that one would be set at. So what I did is I put a 10 picofarad in parallel, in series rather, with that one coming in from that little modification I made. So the reduction of that capacitance makes it more sensitive at the top.
Elle n'est pas avec les vrais gens. Les républicains ont joué. They would now work hard in the soil of the earth to raise crops for food.
Sin ser intolerantes a fe.
Sí, sí. Sin intolerante, por supuesto. ¿Por qué? Porque
службы в императорский дворец и впоследствии дослужился до поста императорского двора. Его потомки так.
So you see, what this has become is actually more a fine tuning than a band spread, because the effect of that capacitance is over a much smaller range. So what you do is you find a blob, a station, you know it's there, and then you fine tune to it. So it's really working much better than it was before. As some of you mentioned, that capacitance was probably a little too high. It might sound strange, you know, 14, 15 picofarads might sound like almost nothing, but when you're dealing with frequencies very close together, it does make a difference. So I've got that working the way I want it. Let's look at medium wave. And this doesn't really affect it much. There's a slight effect, but not much. All these are from the Canary Islands.
En vitaminas, ricos en minerales. De una dieta, de la dieta paleolítica, yo no lo recomiendo en absoluto. Ojo, y además se basa en mucha carne.
Long wave. This has almost no effect down there. And finally, FM. We'll start at the bottom of the band.
Deixa-vos uma única pista. É alguém que faz parte do panorama da música nacional. Bom, mentira, não é?
This is actually from the Canary Islands, and I'm picking it up on FM. And a couple of hours ago, the entire band was full of stations from the Canary Islands. I don't know why. At about 4 p.m., that's when I get most of them. But this is Canary Islands. And here's my favorite at 101.6. Now, I've got to say something about this. The sound, let me try and find some talk radio. The sound is not quite what I expected.
Que asseguram a contagem de cada dos vossos votos e em papel. Imaginem a trabalheira, mas nós fazemos isto tudo.
It's not as corpulent. It doesn't have as much body as I expected to get from this huge speaker up front here with the two side speakers. Now, I tried disconnecting the side speakers because I thought maybe too much treble was getting through, but that's not the case. I just think this speaker is not as tubey as some of the other speakers are that I've worked with. And that's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And of course, the final test, which I've already done, I won't show that again, but I will show you that it does work. If you listen to it, you push phono. Did you hear that? That means our Bluetooth is on and Bluetooth is working perfectly. And again, same story, the sound, not quite what I expected. It's not as if it's tinny or anything like that. It just seems to be missing a little bit of that warm tube sound for some reason. I'm not sure whether it's the tubes themselves. The actual, I don't know, it might be the actual speaker, but the circuitry itself doesn't show any reason why that should be the case. The tone controls, you can play with them as much as you like, but it still seems to be missing something. I can't say what it is. I'm not disappointed with it by any means, but let's just say I've heard better, which is a shame because I really like the look of this radio. I really do. So that's about it. That's where I'm going to leave you. And I enjoyed this one because it allowed me to experiment with the dial glass rebuild. And I hope some of you got some ideas from that. It's not as difficult as you might think. If you don't know how to use an Illustrator type program to actually design all the little details on here, just find someone who can do that and pay them 20 or 30 bucks. I'm sure they'll enjoy it. Fortunately, I like that sort of thing, so it was fairly easy for me. As I mentioned, if you want a copy of this, just email me. I'll send you the graphics drawings and the final print drawings as well. This was printed on a UV printer, which is not mine. It's a service that I found that has them. So it's a great way to reproduce style glasses. It was done on acrylic, so it won't break. That's another advantage. We'll see how long it lasts. It may not last as well and as long as the glass ones, but for now, I think it looks absolutely fabulous. I also managed to play around with that fine-tuning for shortwave, which is something that I enjoyed doing. And this, of course, came from a lot of ideas from you. So yeah, that's where I'm going to leave you, and the end of another project. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you have, click like, share, subscribe, and all that jazz. And if you want to support the channel directly, you can do so on Patreon, PayPal. Links are in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching. Bye for now. Most of all, stay safe.